I made some medieval era Viking jewelry, and after this video, you can too. And if you are prepared, you can do it in an afternoon. Unlike me. The brooches I used for this project are 3D printed, and I had my husband print them on his Bamboo Labs printer. I will link the website to the file that we use for this project down below, so if you want to print them and use them for your very own medieval Viking jewelry, you can too. He did print around 4 of these for me. 2 of them have flat backs and 2 of them had this little sort of insert piece in the back. He printed them at 50% speed so that they would print out better and not have as much of the print lines on them. So he did a really good job trying to make these look as nice as he could because they are just 3D prints, but I think they turned out really nice. And after I fancied them up a bit, they looked even better. If you're only printing a couple of these, you could probably print them in an hour and a half, maybe an hour is my guesstimate for this, which will definitely cut down some of your production time if you do need to get this project out faster, or like me, you have limited amounts of time because you got a lot of other stuff going on. It's important to note that once the pieces were printed, I did not sand them. I just left them as they were because I didn't have time for that. I didn't even sand the back of them, but also because I didn't want to sand down any of the front detail on the pieces, so I just left them the way they were. I prepped these pieces for painting by coating them with some Mod Podge, in hopes that the Mod Podge would help the acrylic paint adhere to them. Could I have just painted over the prints with acrylic paint? Maybe. I haven't really painted 3D prints before, so this was a huge experiment for me. So I decided to play it safe and just coat them with something first, just in case. I did speed up the drying time of the Mod Podge using a heat gun or a little hair dryer if you have one. I did this in between each of the paint layers as well in order to speed up the drying time of this project. Using a heat gun or a craft tool like I have is a great way to speed up your drying time on paints. So if you are pressed for time, even grab yourself a hair dryer and it will speed up your working time. So once the Mod Podge coat was dry, I covered these with black acrylic paint. I wanted a darker base layer to fill in a lot of the voids of the detail of the print. So it had a nice dark background underneath the next coat that I was going to put on them. Once the black was dry, and again, used a heat gun or a craft tool to dry them, I coated them with a bronze acrylic paint. And wow, the coloration on these is exactly what I was looking for. So I am so glad I painted them this way. I really feel like the black under the bronze really helped to create some depth in the paint. I'm not sure if it would have had the same effect had I not added that there first. However, not having another piece to compare to, I have no idea. I'm just guessing based on what I've seen from these ones. Once the paint on the brooches was dry, I felt like it was still a little bit tacky, and I didn't want it to chip or rub away when I was wearing them on my Viking apron dress. So I decided to coat them with a sealant. I ended up using a Mod Podge sealer for this because that's just what I had. I think if you had like a spray-on sealer or something, that would also work really well. So 2 of the brooches, like I said, had a flat back, and the other 2 had this sort of claspy area on the back. I don't really know what to call it, except it was an additional piece that kind of sat in the back of it where it looked like you could string something through it once you had attached it, or do what I ended up doing and gluing a safety pin underneath that piece to turn it into a brooch. I hadn't purchased any brooch pin backs for this project, and I had a bunch of safety pins, so I thought, I know what I can use for this. I'm going to use a safety pin, and it's going to work out just fine. When I was initially gluing this together, I thought the best glue for this was hot glue. I don't know why I thought hot glue was the best glue to use for this, because, I should have known it really wasn't going to work out. especially since I want to wear this in the summertime at Ren Fairs under the hot summer sun. And hot glue has a tendency to melt when it's exposed to heat and just turn into like, melted glue again. So I don't know why my brain thought that was a good idea, but here we are. Needless to say, once I was trying to get the necklace bit onto the brooches and was fiddling with that, the whole thing fell apart. It didn't hold. Big surprise there, I know. I'm actually glad that this happened at this point in time and not when I was out wearing it at a fair or something, because that would be a catastrophe if everything fell apart when you're walking around outside and you might lose some of your beads or something. So it's probably good that this happened now and not later on. But I did wonder what would be a better glue to use. I'd pondered maybe a crazy glue, but then I remembered I had 2-part epoxy, and that's what I went with. I know 2-part epoxy is so strong, it glues so many things together. So yeah, I used 2-part epoxy. It stinks like crazy amount and it takes longer to dry and cure. I had to let this dry and cure overnight. And so is this an in an afternoon project? Yes and no. Depends on how you go about this. Depends on what you use to glue it together with. There are many, many options. This is just the option that I end up going with, and it worked really well. Before I glued it back together, though, I ended up sanding the little connector bit on the back down to remove the paint that was on there, and also on the inside where it sits. Then I mixed up the 2-part epoxy and glued everything together using some sticks to try to hold it so it wouldn't move, and hoping I didn't get it everywhere. Just one of those finicky kind of things. Once I left it to dry, though, it was definitely really solid. So if you aren't on a time constraint, this is definitely an option. If you're on a time constraint, try maybe like a crazy glue or a Gorilla Glue or something else. I feel like, and I could be very, very wrong, for 3D prints, I know there's a glue that they use for 3D prints. Find out what that is. I think it's a crazy glue, maybe a crazy glue with an accelerator, something like that, and it would definitely speed up your time. I did end up ordering some glass beads from Grimfrost, which is a store in Sweden that has so much medieval Viking paraphernalia that if you were into that and you like that era, definitely check them out. Very cool. You can even buy dress kits and things so that they'll send you the fabric with the pattern and everything, and you can make it like that, or you can buy things that are already pre-made. I did price brooches on their sites, the Tortoise brooches, and they range in price anywhere from $44 to $300. If the $44 ones were in stock, I probably would have just bought them, but they were not. And neither were the $80 ones or the $100 ones. The only ones that were kind of in stock were well over $200 Canadian. And that's why we 3D printed some. That's my main reasoning for this. Otherwise, this video probably wouldn't have been made, but here we are. Is it cheaper? Maybe. If you have a 3D printer. If you don't, just buy some brooches. Although, if you're going to print a bunch of other 3D things, if you want to print other 3D things, it is a good investment if you want to get into 3D printing. However, there are maker spaces where you can take your print file into and have them print them for a small fee. So that would also still be probably cheaper than buying the other ones. Just as a thought. Third option is you find a friend who has a 3D printer and you get them to print it for you. So I ordered a bunch of these glass reproduction beads. They're Burka beads, I believe. I ordered enough. I thought I ordered enough to have enough and maybe, not run out, that sort of thing. I ordered probably too many than I needed for this project. I have some left over. And I thought maybe I'll get one string out of that. No, I ended up having 2 strings the first time that I made them. I used cotton cord to string the beads, and then all I did was tie knots in the end with loops on them and then hang them on the safety pins of the brooches, and then I could attach the brooches to the dress. The whole point of the tortoise brooches is to help hold the apron dress up. So you sort of pin them through and it helps hold the straps to the body of the front of the dress. I found this incredibly finicky, like a pain in the butt finicky. Because the beads were so heavy and I was trying to work around pinning them and everything, I hated it. It was a horrible, I would hate it every time I had to do it sort of thing. Knowing me, it would frustrate me to no end. After I had strung these beads and shot my apron dress video, I saw this picture when I was doing a little bit more research into these types of Viking jewelry pieces, which I have learned are called festoons, which is interesting. And it's a fun word to say. So you got your tortoise brooches and you have your festoons. And apparently they would hang a variety of things off of here, even useful things that they would need from day to day. So decorative, the beads they would get from trading with other people. So it's very interesting, the history even behind it and why and how they used them. At any rate, I noticed on this picture that they're not just tied on, they have like special clasps and things so that you can have multiple strings. And there was metal there as well. And I thought to myself, well, if medieval era people had it, then, well, so can I, right? Just maybe a more modernized version of that. So of course I had to make a trip to the craft store. And while I was there buying the connectors and some clasps, I ended up buying some more beads as well. They had lava rock at Michael's, and I was very excited about that. When we went to Iceland, there was lava rock everywhere for obvious reasons, but they had jewelry made out of lava rock. They had so many things that was made out of lava rock, and you can buy it at Michael's at the craft store. They have some. You don't even have to go to Iceland to get some. You can just, go into your store and buy lava rock. Just to decorate your festoon, your jewelry, a little bit differently and add just different kind of eclectic, intricate pieces that they probably would have collected and added to their attire to make it look prettier or fancier. So because I had everything strung up, I had to unstring them and actually cut the one because I had knotted it so well. Those knots were a pain in my behind as well, trying to figure out how to tie them together. I don't know why my brain couldn't knot that day. It was just like, I don't know what to do with this. Let's keep messing it up every time you try to get them even, sort of thing. So this method that I did after the fact, way easier and much easier to make the sides even. So I unstrung my beads and then started choosing which ones I wanted to have on the necklaces, the festoons. And then I was choosing some of the other beads that I bought at Michael's, and then had a quick realization that I wasn't really smart when I went to Michael's, and I didn't really pay much attention to the hole size in some of these beads, and a lot of them that I bought just won't work for this project. So that was disappointing. However, I have them for future projects, so future Pam can thank past Pam for her due diligence and buying all these extra pretty things. Because I was struggling with beading them, I ended up getting a needle that I felt like was small enough to go through some of the ones that I wanted to use. I did have to pick and choose through the lava rock and some of the other beads to find ones that would actually even fit over that needle area. So it was a little bit finicky in that regard. However, patience pays off in a lot of situations, and this is just one of those situations. So I'm happy with really how these turned out. Unfortunately, I wasn't really paying attention because I was so into what I was doing, and my camera decided to stop recording, and so I didn't get the parts where I was knotting on the little connector rings to the beaded part. But all I did was take one of the connectors and just knot it on with square knots. Then I used a few of the O-ring connectors to attach the strings together. This took a little bit of trial and error just to figure out how to string them together to get them to lay with one further up than the other one. And then I ended up attaching a claw clasp to the end so that I could hook and unhook them from my turtle brooches whenever I wanted. So I could pin the brooches first to the dress on their own and not deal with anything heavy hanging down below them that was pulling as I was trying to do it. And then just hook the necklace bit on after the fact. So I'm happy I did this. I think it turned out so great. I love how they look. Let me know what you think, because I just love them. I can't wait to see what this looks like on again afterwards. Unsure if they might be a little bit long, especially the bottom one, but honestly, I don't really care at this point. They just look really good. So I'm happy I did this change to them and didn't just leave them with the glass beads on them. While this project did take me a little bit longer, it is definitely achievable in an afternoon. It is an afternoon project if you have all of your ducks in a row. I didn't have all my ducks in a row, so it took me a little bit longer, but hey, that's the whole fun of working on projects and figuring out how to piece everything together. And with the help of this video, you won't have those problems, right? If you want to watch me make the dresses for this project, the underdress and the apron dress, you can either click here or here. My name is Pam, and this is Total Pamarchy, the craft channel with a little anarchy. Until next time, bye.